What's going on, baseball fans? How you doing? So the trade deadline has come and gone. So in this video, I'm going to give my grades for each team. Let's go talk about it. Before we get started, if you are new to the channel and you're looking for more baseball content, think about subscribing down below. Hit the like button, hit the bell button, hit the share button, hit all the buttons. Let's start off with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They did make a couple of moves, trading David Peralta to the Tampa Bay Rays, Luke Weaver to the Kansas City Royals, bringing back a couple of prospects, Emmanuel Rivera and Christian Cerda. With Emmanuel Rivera, this is a guy, he has played a little bit in the major leagues. Overall, he's played 92 games, but he's only hit 243, a 294 on base, a 378 slugging, but he has hit really well in the minors this year. Over 20 games in AAA, he was hitting 307 with a 388 on base and a 520 slugging. He's a corner infielder, so who knows, maybe the Diamondbacks can get something out of him. And then with someone like Christian Cerda, he's 19 years old, he's a catcher. He has been hitting pretty well so far in the minor leagues, so we'll have to just wait and see. But the Diamondbacks, hey, you know, they cleared out a couple of guys that they just really had no point hanging on to those guys, bringing in a couple of prospects. But, you know, nothing huge for the Diamondbacks. I mean, they're pretty much out of it anyway, so I'll just go with a C for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Moving on to the defending World Series champion Atlanta Braves. They made a few pretty decent moves here, bringing in Raisel Iglesias for the bullpen. That's a huge upgrade. Jake Odorizzi, some depth for the rotation. You brought in Robbie Grossman and Adrianza, some depth for both the outfield and the infield. I like it a lot. Now, Robbie Grossman, not having a great year by any means, but this is going to be another bat that they could turn to. They've had some guys struggling. Eddie Rosario, he has really not gotten it together this year. Marcell Ozuna, he's got a few home runs, but his other numbers pretty low. So it adds some depth here like Grossman. He's always been a pretty good on-base guy. Let's see if he can get it turned around with the Atlanta Braves. But the big addition was Raisel Iglesias for the bullpen. He's going to slide into the setup role, and also, like I said, with Jake Odorizzi for the rotation. Just a good, solid deadline. Nothing extravagant by any means, but just adding some depth, getting a guy for the rotation, getting an upgrade for the bullpen. I'll go B for the Atlanta Braves. How about the surprising Baltimore Orioles? Who would have thought they would be in contention for a wild card spot at this point of the season? I know I didn't. I know you didn't. But the Orioles, they're playing great baseball this year. Now, they made a couple of moves where I could see Orioles fans being a bit upset here. Trading away your closer, Jorge Lopez, as well as Trey Mancini, the face of your team. But the Orioles, you have to remember here, they are in a rebuild. They have a vision for the future, long-term sustainability. They're on a path, they're on a journey to continue to beef up that farm system so they can keep having good teams year to year to year in the future. So for that, it came at the expense of someone like a Jorge Lopez and a Trey Mancini, but you did bring in some pretty good prospects. You brought in Seth Johnson, most notably, the number 8 prospect in your system now. You did just have Tommy John, but this is a really good picture you brought back into your system. They brought in Chase McDermott. He's now the number 12 prospect in your system. And then they brought in a couple of other guys, Cade Povich and Yennier Cano. Taking a look here at Povich, he is a little lower down here, but he's number 26. You added quality talent to this farm system. And hey, the Orioles, let's see what they can do here without Mancini and Lopez. That bullpen's been really good. I'm sure another guy can step into that closer role for the Orioles. But for the Orioles, I think for what they're trying to do, I think they had themselves a good deadline. They stuck to what they're trying to do. They're on a rebuild. So overall, I think for the Orioles, I'm going to just give them a solid B. I think they did a good job. My Red Sox had a very interesting deadline, most notably adding Eric Hosmer. Now, with Eric Hosmer, the Padres are also sending over a lot of cash, so it's no longer an under-the-water contract. That's a huge plus for the Red Sox. And in the process, yes, you did have to part with the pitching prospect in Jay Groom, but they were able to bring in some position players, Corey Rozier and Max Ferguson. You also traded away Christian Vasquez. That was tough, but you brought in a couple of decent prospects here in Emmanuel Valdez and Wilyer Abreu. Both have a lot of good upside there. And then you brought in Tommy Pham. So basically, and you also brought in Reese McGuire. Basically what they did here with Christian Vasquez is they replaced his glove with Reese McGuire, and they replaced the bat with Tommy Pham as well as Eric Hosmer. So what the Red Sox are doing here, this is what I was saying coming into the deadline. They were going to buy and sell. They're going to sell off a couple of pieces. They traded away Christian Vasquez as well as Jake Diekman. I thought they were going to trade away JD Martinez, but he ended up staying. But in the process, you added guys that were going to help you at the major league level, and they added prospects at the same time. So taking a look here at the Red Sox farm system on pipeline, Max Ferguson, Wilyer Abreu, and Valdez round out the bottom half of your top 30. They're already looking pretty good here with some of these prospects at the top, but they need to add depth to this farm system, and that's what Chaim Bloom did here. I think they stuck to their plan, and I think they did a good job with it. I feel like they could have done a little bit more. I guess there was not a deal out there for JD Martinez. It would have been nice to bring in some kind of pitching, but in the end, what can you do? They added prospects. I think for the Red Sox, I'm just going to give them a solid B. I think they did a good job. They stuck to their plan, and hey, they did it effectively. On to the Chicago Cubs, and the main focus here was, were they going to trade away Wilson Contreras as well as Ian Happ? Both guys ended up staying, and what the Chicago Cubs ended up doing was just trading away pieces from their bullpen. They traded away closer David Robertson as well as Scott Effross and Michael Givens. They did get some nice pieces back here. Hayden Wesneski, Ben Brown. If you go take a look at their their top 30 as of right now on Pipeline, Wesneski is now their number 8, and Ben Brown is now their number 11. They also brought in another prospect in Saul Gonzalez in the Michael Givens trade. But I feel like the Cubs, I don't know what was going on here with Contreras and Happ. I feel like this was a good chance to cash in on Contreras. I don't know what their plan is going to be moving forward with him. Are they going to sign him to an extension? But I feel like you could have gotten something for him. His name had been in the rumor mill for a couple of weeks now, few weeks, months even. So I'm not sure what happened with that. Ian Happ, I feel like you could have gotten something for him. I'm not sure what the market was like. I know the Dodgers were in on him. But, hey, what can you do? I feel like the Cubs did a good job adding a couple of pitching prospects in Ben Brown and Wesneski, but I feel like they just could have done more here. In the end, hey, I'm just going to give the Cubs a C. They stuck to their plan trying to add prospects, but I feel like they just could have done a little bit more. Moving on to the other side of Chicago, let's talk about the White Sox. The White Sox really didn't do anything. You added Jake Diekman. That's it. I can tell you right now, Jake Diekman has been absolutely just awful to watch this year with the Red Sox. Yeah, he had a couple of good moments, but man, he had some tough outings with the Red Sox, sending over Reese McGuire, good defensive catcher there. But I feel like the White Sox just could have done more here. You added something for the bullpen, but Diekman was the best that you can do. I understand the White Sox don't have too much of a farm. I mean, if we go take a look at the White Sox, they got one of the worst farms in baseball right now. I mean, you got a couple of good pieces at the top, but there's just not a whole lot of depth. There's not a whole lot of high-value players in this farm system. But I think for the White Sox, you could have just done a little bit more than someone like a Jake Diekman. They have been playing better lately, so I do think they have a team talented enough to get back into the race and get into the playoffs. So, but I just feel like Diekman, that was the best that you can do. I'm going to be honest here. I might be a little harsh, but I'm going to go F for the White Sox. Diekman, his FIP is in the 5s. I mean, I just feel like you could have done a little better than that. How about the Cincinnati Reds trading away Luis Castillo, and they got a haul for him. Noelvi Marte, Levi Stout, Edwin Arroyo, Andrew Moore. I mean, look at this Reds farm system now. You got Marte as your number 1. You also added Arroyo, who's going to be your number 6 now. Don't forget, they also added Spencer Steer in the Tyler Mahle trade. And don't forget, they added as well Steve Hajar. He came over in the Mahle trade as well. To me, the Reds, this is exactly what they needed to do. They got a haul for Luis Castillo. I mean, that package was an absolute win for them. I mean, my goodness, you also got Victor Acosta for Brandon Drury. I mean, they did a great job here. This is as good of a job you could do if you're selling pieces like this. I'm giving the Reds an A. I mean, your farm system is now one of the better farm systems in baseball. Their future is looking bright. I'm going to be honest here. I found it a little surprising that the Cleveland Guardians did nothing. If we go take a look at the moves they made, I mean, they traded away Sandy Leon to the Twins. You brought in Ian Hamilton. He's going to be a depth piece in your farm system. But he's not really ranking all that high. I'm just kind of surprised. I thought the Guardians maybe could have done something. I understand the Guardians, they are still looking a little towards the future, but they got a lot of pieces in that farm. I feel like maybe you could have done something. I know you don't want to jump the gun. You still are, kind of slightly in a rebuild. They're doing really well this year. But I think for the Guardians, you could have maybe done something. I think a guy for the rotation would have been pretty nice. There had been talks of them maybe looking at trading away someone like a Zach Plesac. Or Savali as well, but in the end, they just didn't do anything. I mean, I just feel like they could have done something. That's just what I think. I'm going to give them an F, to be completely honest. You had pieces in that farm to go out there and make some kind of a move, and you didn't really do anything. I'm going to give them an F. The Colorado Rockies did absolutely nothing. I mean, my goodness. What are the Rockies doing here? You had some guys that are going to be free agents. You had Colomé, you had Cole. You did sign Daniel Bard to an extension. I thought that was a good move. He's been doing really well for them. But you didn't trade either of these guys who are going to be free agents. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they plan on re-signing these guys, but you didn't do anything? Nothing? You couldn't get any pieces for them? You couldn't add anything to your farm? I mean, Rockies, I'm giving you an F. Just point blank F. On to the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers were in a tough spot at this deadline. They were trying to be in contention this year. That hasn't worked out. And they just didn't really have a lot of pieces to send off. You did trade Robbie Grossman and Michael Fulmer. You brought back a couple of depth pieces in Sawyer Gibson and Chris Anglin. But like I said, the Tigers, they weren't really in any kind of a position to add anything. They did have Tarek Skubal on the rumor mill, but then he ended up going on the IL. So they had their hands tied with that. They wanted to try and get back a decent package with him. In the end, I just think the Tigers, they did something at least. But they're looking more towards the offseason. I think for the Tigers, I'm just going to go D here. I really like what the Astros did at this deadline. You added a little bit of everything. Will Smith for the bullpen, Christian Vasquez to help out with the catching, a good bat in Trey Mancini. This is what the Astros needed to do. They needed to shore up some weak spots of that team. You needed a little bit more offense at the catching position. Christian Vasquez is having a decent year at the plate. Martin Maldonado is more of a glove first, work with the pitchers kind of a guy, while Vasquez is also that, but he's going to give you a little bit more of a bat. Trey Mancini, Yuli Gurriel had been struggling. July was a little bit better, but Mancini, he's going to help out with that lineup. That was a really good add. And then Will Smith, you know, you're adding him for middle relief, a nice lefty arm. They needed a lefty arm for that bullpen. So I like what the Astros did. I'm going to go A for the Houston Astros. They're right there at the top of the American League. I'm thinking Astros, they get an A here. You know, I think the Royals had a pretty underrated deadline. If we take a look at what the Royals did, they traded away Andrew Benintendi most notably, but they got back a couple of pretty good pieces from the Yankees in Beck Way, TJ Sakema, as well as Chandler Champlin. If we take a look at their top 30 on Pipeline, Beck Way is now their number 12, and Sakema is now their number 22. They also got Samad Taylor back in the Whit Merrifield trade. Samad Taylor is now their number 23 prospect. And finally, they traded away Whit Merrifield. That was like about 2 years too late, if you ask me. They also brought in Luke Weaver. That could have been a head scratcher for some people. But for Luke Weaver, this is a guy, he's not going to be a free agent for another year, so he's going to be on your team for next year. So I thought that was an okay ad for them. I think for the Royals, I'm going to give them a B. I think they actually had a pretty underrated deadline. Moving on to the disappointing LA Angels. Oh my goodness, I was thinking maybe they were going to trade Ohtani. They ended up not doing it. We'll talk about that here in a second. Let's talk about what the Angels did do. They traded away Noah Syndergaard, Raisel Iglesias, and Brandon Marsh. A little surprising there. I did not expect Brandon Marsh to go anywhere, but I like that they got Logan O'Hoppe in that trade. If you take a look at the Angels farm system, they had no catching really in that farm system. You did have Edgar Cuero, he's the number 9, but he's far away. Logan O'Hoppe is getting pretty close. He's doing well in the minors. This is their future catcher. They can make up, you know, for the loss of Brandon Marsh down the road. But Logan O'Hoppe, man, it's not very often you come across a good catching prospect. I thought that was a good ad for them. You also added some young pitchers a young pitcher in Tucker Davidson, Jesse Chavez, 38 years old. But they did have to trade away Raisel Iglesias there. I did like the Tucker Davidson ad. He hasn't really lived up to expectations, but, you know, hey, he's a young arm. I think that was a good ad for them. You added Mickey Moniak. He's been a complete bust. You got JDL Sanchez. To me, I think the Angels did okay, in my opinion. Again, I like the Logan O'Hoppe ad there. I thought that was a good ad. But for the Angels, you know, I'm going to be honest, my personal opinion, I would have just traded away Ohtani. I understand that guy probably brings in so much revenue with just ticket sales, merchandise, jerseys, bobbleheads galore. I understand trading Ohtani, or trading away Ohtani. You're probably going to lose a lot of money there. But with Ohtani, man, that guy could have really brought you back a nice package. And then again, who knows? Maybe teams who are still a little iffy about his injury history in the past, maybe they're worried about his durability. So maybe the Angels felt like they weren't really getting enough offers. But when you looked at on baseball trade values, you know, very high value, I would think you could have gotten a good package for him. I don't know. In the end, we'll never know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. My thinking is they're going to try and go for it next year. And if they're out of it by the deadline, I think they'll trade away Ohtani at the next deadline. So I expect the Angels to be busy this offseason. Hopefully they can finally put together a team around Ohtani. He has said that he just wants to win. You know, that's the big thing. So I expect the Angels to be busy in the offseason and go out there and try and add some guys. But in my opinion, if they're out of it at the deadline next year, Ohtani is good as gone. I'll give him a C. They did add some pieces. You got a young starting pitcher in Tucker Davidson. I really do like the Logan O'Hoppe ad. But for the Angels, I'm going to give them a C. As for the other team in LA, surprisingly quiet at this year's deadline. No big moves like Max Scherzer and Trey Turner last year. They were in on the Juan Soto talks. They ended up coming up short. But the Dodgers, a quiet deadline. They were also in the rumor mill for Ian Happ, so that ended up never happening. But they ended up adding Joey Gallo. That I didn't expect Gallo to go to the Dodgers, so let's see if the Dodgers can get him turned around. If they can get him fixed, if they can get that power bat going again, oh, that'll be huge, man. They did have to give up Clayton Beeter, but he wasn't doing all that well in their farm system, so change the scenery for him will be good. But if they can get something out of Gallo, that's going to be huge for them. And they did add Chris Martin as well out of the Cubs bullpen, so he'll go into middle relief for them. I thought the Dodgers, okay. In the end, they have a talented team already, a great offense, good starting pitching. James Outman has also been doing really good lately. I feel like you maybe could have added something else to this bullpen, but in the end, I feel like the Dodgers, they're talented enough to go on a run here and try and win it all. I think for the Dodgers, I'll go C for them. You did a couple of things. Maybe Gallo could end up being a really good piece for you in the second half. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm going to go C. The Miami Marlins did not do all that much, but they did add an interesting piece here in Jordan Groshans, who did ship away Anthony Bass as well as Zach Pop. But to me, Jordan Groshans, this is an interesting ad. He is now your number 4 prospect in your system. A bit of a down year, only hitting 247 with a 293 slugging. The on base is still okay at 341. He's never really been too much of a power guy, so I'm not too concerned with that. I'm still glad that he is getting on base, but this is a guy that could end up being a really solid player for you. He's been one of the Blue Jays' higher prospects for a couple of years now. I really like this addition. The Marlins, you got to remember here, they're still not quite there yet. They're still looking for the future. And to me, to add a pretty solid piece like this that can help you out in the next couple of years, I thought it was solid. They didn't do all that much, but in the end, I'm feeling a little frisky here. I'm going to go B for the Marlins. It's not very often you can add a pretty good piece like that in a Jordan Groshans. I know his value has dropped, but this guy has a lot of potential. I like him, and you only had to give up Anthony Bass, who, really wasn't really doing your team really any good. So for me, if you're adding a future bat like Jordan Groshans, I like the move. I'm going to give the Marlins a B. I think you could go C here. But you know what? I'm feeling a little frisky. I'm going to go B for the Marlins. The Milwaukee Brewers made a stunning trade of Josh Hader. I really could not believe that was even happening. I figured we were past all of the Josh Hader trade rumor stuff from the last couple of years. But there he was, going off to San Diego. I thought that was crazy. But I think the Brewers actually did really well here, despite shipping off one of the better closers in the game. They did a good job at replacing him in that bullpen. They brought back Taylor Rogers in that deal. Don't forget, they brought back Lamet as well. Struggling this year, but if they can get him back on track, that would be awesome. You brought back a good pitching prospect in Robert Gasser. You also brought in Esteury Ruiz. Don't forget, you brought in Trevor Rosenthal. He has not made an appearance this year, but this guy, when he's healthy, he could be one of the better relievers in the game. You brought in Matt Bush, power arm from the Rangers. They did a great job with this bullpen. I really like what the Brewers did. You gave up a big piece in Josh Hader, but I think they did as good of a job at replacing him as well as also adding in some prospects for your farm. I think they did a good job. I feel like they could have maybe done a little more. Could they have added a bat, maybe some kind of a starter or some kind of a starting pitcher possibly? For me, I'm going to go with a B for the Brewers. I think you could even say a B+. You lost a lot with Hader, but you also brought back a good trio of relievers there. And hey, for the Brewers, I'm going to give them a B. I think a lot of people were thinking the Mets were going to make some kind of splash, but you have to remember here with the Mets, they made most of their moves in the offseason, adding guys like Scherzer, Bassett, Kana, Marte. They did a lot of work in the offseason, man. So I'm not surprised that they ended up making really just more of a few tinkering kind of moves. If we take a look here, you brought in Givens for the bullpen. You brought in Ruff for some depth on the bench. You brought in Naquin as well. And don't forget about Vogelbach. You traded for him a little bit before the deadline. So I think the Mets, they had a decent deadline. You didn't really need to do anything too crazy. Like I said, you've already done most of your work in the offseason. Could they have maybe added something a little more like a David Robertson instead of a Michael Givens? Maybe brought in someone like Contreras. Maybe just done a little bit more, possibly. I think for the Mets, hey, you made a couple of tweaks here. I'll go a C for the Mets. The Yankees had an absolute banger of a deadline. It pains me to say as a Red Sox fan, but oh my goodness, they did a fantastic job. They started off with Benintendi a few days ago. They brought in Efros. Montas was the big piece, though. A huge addition for the rotation to go along with Garrett Cole for the playoffs. You brought in Luke Trevino as well. They had some injuries to that bullpen, so adding Efros and Trevino, those were good adds. Trevino has some better advanced numbers than the surface numbers, so I think it was a good add. You also were able to get rid of Gallo, but you brought in Harrison Bader. I know a lot of Yankee fans are upset about trading away a Jordan Montgomery, but you brought in Montas. Bader, when he's going to be fine, he's going to be healthy eventually. He's dealing with some plantar fasciitis, but this is one of the better defensive center fielders in the game. He's an elite center fielder. Oh my goodness, when you have him out in center field, Yankee fans, you are going to be in love with him. This was an awesome deadline for the Yankees. You brought in a little bit of everything. I don't know what else you could have done. I mean, yeah, Luis Castillo, I think, would have been nice. I would have rather have had him than Montas, but Montas, I mean, come on. This guy, he's going to be extremely good for that rotation. I'm putting the Yankees in the S tier. Brian Cashman did an absolutely fantastic job. Speaking of Frankie Montas, let's talk about the Oakland A's. They did pretty well in this package, trading away Montas and Trevino to the Yankees, and in return, they got J.P. Sears, Waldichuk, Medina, and Bowman. If you take a look at their top 30, Waldichuk is now their number 3. Medina is now their number 7. Moving on down the list here, J.P. Sears is now the number 19. You brought in also, and then Bowman is now your number 29. They really improved this farm with this trade. I think they did a good job here. This is exactly what they needed to do. The A's are no way in any way, shape, or form close to contention. You need to add prospects where you can. I think they did a great job with this trade. A very nice package. For me, with what the A's are doing, you got to remember here, each team has a bit of a different goal. For the A's, I'm going to give them an A for what they did. I mean, that's exactly what you needed to do. That was your homework. You needed to go out there, trade away Montas and Trevino, and get back some good prospects. They did exactly that. They achieved their goal. I'm going to give them an A. I love what the Phillies did at this deadline. They made some moves. You can always count on Dave Dombrowski to make some moves for you. You brought in Noah Syndergaard for the rotation. That's going to be a good piece down the stretch. Please give me Noah Syndergaard versus the Mets in the playoffs. I need it. I need it now. You brought in David Robertson for the bullpen. He's having a great year. He's going to shore that up. And you also brought in Brandon Marsh. You needed a center fielder. They had really no answers at that position. And now you brought in a young center fielder in Brandon Marsh. Sure, it came at the expense of a Logan O'Hoppe, but you got JT Realmuto for the next few years. I think they're going to end up being fine. Brandon Marsh was a really good add for them. Hadn't really been doing all that much with the Angels. Let's see if the Phillies can get him turned around. He's good defensively. He's been good defensively so far. The offense just hasn't been quite there. Let's see if they can tap into that offense for him. But I think the Phillies did a great job. They did a few moves here that shored up some spots on their team. To me, the Phillies, they're in contention. They're right there in the wild card race. I'm going to give them an A. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Pirates. You made a couple of deals here, most notably trading away Jose Quintana and Stratton to the Cardinals, also Vogelbach to the Mets. And you brought in some young pieces here that can help your team over the next few years. Colin Holderman actually goes right into their bullpen. He's under control for a bit. I think he's actually going to be a pretty nice piece for their bullpen over the next couple of years. You added some young players in Beasley, Oviedo, always like adding some pitching depth to your organization, as well as Malcolm Nunez, who is now their number 11 prospect. But one thing that I like that the Pirates did was something that they didn't do, and that's trade away Brian Reynolds as well as David Bednar. This is a team, they got some good young pieces that are getting close to being Major League ready. O'Neal Cruz was one of the latest guys to come up this year, but they got some beef in that farm, man. I think it was really good that they did not part with a Brian Reynolds or a Bednar. Those guys are under control. Brian Reynolds, that's a guy that you can build around. To me, I know there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, why wouldn't you just trade these guys, try and maximize their value? Jim Bowden, I'm looking at you. But to me, I think it's great that they didn't trade them. I mean, yeah, they're great pieces and they can give you a lot of prospects, but the Pirates are getting close to contending. So I think it's actually really good that they held on to those guys. And you know what? They added some young pieces here. You added a pretty good prospect for your top 30, and you didn't get rid of good players and those players that can help you over the next couple of years. For the Pirates, I'm going to give them a B. I think the Pirates did a pretty good job, a bit of an underrated deadline if you ask me. How about the San Diego Padres? I mean, what else is there to say? What else is there to say? You're bringing in the modern-day Ted Williams with Juan Soto, and you got to throw in Josh Bell, who's having a great season. I mean, the fact that Josh Bell was barely even mentioned here, that's just hilarious to me. That's how impactful of an ad Juan Soto was. Absolutely amazing. We haven't seen a trade like that ever during the season, ever. We've seen big trades in the past, with big-name players. Miguel Cabrera, A-Rod come to mind. But Juan Soto, this is just, it's still crazy to me that he's on another team. It's just nuts. But they did have to obviously give up a pretty decent size package here to acquire his services. Gore, Abrams, Hassel, Wood, those are some good prospects. Also sending over Susanna and Voit there as well. But they also traded for Josh Hader. Like, what the heck is going on? They brought in Brandon Drury. You got Eric Hosmer off of your payroll. Sure, they're going to have to pay most of that contract, but they did get Jay Groom in that deal. And, being in the Red Sox farm system, I've seen him really just do a lot better this year. He had Tommy John not too long ago, but he's come back and he's been doing a lot better. So the fact that they were able to add a young pitcher to their system like that, I think that was good for them. They had an amazing deadline. This is one of the best deadlines a team will ever have. And you know what I'm going to do here? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a tier above. I'm going to go S+. I mean, my goodness, the Yankees were an S tier, but to me, the Padres, man, their deadline was just better. I mean, the Yankees did amazing, but the Padres this is one of the best deadlines of all time. I'm going S+ for the San Diego Padres. The Seattle Mariners made quite the splash, adding Luis Castillo. They did have to part with a pretty hefty package in Marte, Stout, Arroyo, and more. But to get someone like Luis Castillo for the top of the rotation, that's exactly what you need to go do if you're pushing for the playoffs. And then if you're in the playoffs, that's the kind of guy that you need to be able to turn to. I liked the rotation this year, but it felt like it just needed something, and Luis Castillo was exactly the piece that they needed. They did make a couple other moves as well, adding Boyd, Casali, Lamb. Those are okay, but Castillo, this was the big one for me. Could they have maybe added another bat somewhere? Sure, maybe another arm for the bullpen, but Castillo, a huge move for them. I love that move. I'm going to go A for the Seattle Mariners. People started to wonder if Carlos Rodon was going to end up getting traded, but he ended up staying with the San Francisco Giants. But the Giants actually made a couple of moves here. They were actually more busy than you might have thought. Taking a look at the deals they made a deal with the Cubs, bringing in Dixon Machado. They brought in Ford Proctor for Jeremy Walker. They traded away Darren Ruff. That was probably their most notable deal. And, well, I guess Matt Boyd and Casali is pretty notable too. But Darren Ruff, you brought in J.D. Davis. You brought in Nick Zwok, Carson Seymour, and Zapucki. Zapucki, a young pitcher. I like that ad for them. And with the Giants, when it comes to pitching, anytime they add pitching, I'm always wondering, are they going to be able to turn these guys into some pretty solid guys? Zapucki never really got his footing with the Mets. Let's see what he can do with the Giants. And J.D. Davis, he goes right into the Giants lineup, so I like that. That's a guy that's under control for the next couple of years. And then Carson Seymour, as well as Zwok, if we take a look here, they're now the number 28, 29 in their top 30. The Giants, they actually did a little bit here, nothing crazy. Could they have cashed in on Carlos Rodon? I'm imagining he's going to test the free agent market. In the end, they just didn't get a deal together. I'm going to go C for the San Francisco Giants. The St. Louis Cardinals needed pitching, and that's exactly what they did. Bringing in Jose Quintana, first of all, and also Chris Stratton. He's going to go to their bullpen. They needed an arm for that bullpen too. But you also brought in Jordan Montgomery. I thought that was really good. They needed depth for the rotation. They were having like a 3-man rotation at one point. They were having so many injuries. So now you got Quintana and Montgomery down the stretch. Yes, you had to give up Harrison Bader. I bet that's pretty tough for some Cardinals fans to swallow. So in center field now, you're just going to have Dylan Carlson out in center, Tyler O'Neill out in left, and then Newt Barr is just going to be out in right. To me, I think this is exactly what they needed to do, adding guys like Quintana and Montgomery. They got some good depth for the second half now to try and go after that central crown. I like what the Cardinals did. I'm going to give them a solid B. Not a whole lot going on here for the Tampa Bay Rays, most notably adding David Peralta, but you did bring in Jose Siri. I think he could be a really interesting player for them. Let's see if they can tap more into his potential. You brought in some other guys like Jeremy Walker, Garrett Clevinger as well. Don't forget about Christian Betancourt earlier this month. I thought the Rays did fine. With the Rays, I'm just always wondering, man, when they trade for certain guys, like especially younger players, I'm always wondering, what are they up to? Because the Rays, they always find ways to tap into their potential. Who knows? We're just going to have to wait and see. I think, for just what we're seeing here, I'm just going to go C for the Tampa Bay Rays. They made a couple of moves, but really with Tampa, it comes down to their player development. Are they going to be able to tap into the potential of these guys? They've had a good track record of doing so, bringing in guys that may be struggling elsewhere, and then they find ways to get the most out of them in Tampa. So I'll go C for here, but who knows? These moves, they can end up being really good for them down the road. Not a whole lot going on for the Rangers either, sending over Matt Bush to the Brewers, but they did get back a couple of younger pieces, Mark Mathias and Antoine Kelly. Antoine Kelly, the most notable piece, the number 15 prospect in their system now. He's got a lot of upside, big fastball, 60 fastball, 55 slider, 50 changeup. Control needs a little bit of work. He's putting up some okay numbers in 19 starts and high A ball so far. For the Rangers, I was hoping maybe they could go after someone like a Pablo Lopez, someone that was under control for the next couple of years, someone that can help them try, get back into more contention over the next couple of years. I was hoping Pablo Lopez would be that guy for them. But in the end, it is what it is. The Rangers, they're just sticking to their plan of their rebuild. I think they're going to be big players in this coming offseason. They were this past offseason. I could definitely expect them to keep on maybe spending this offseason. But for this move, I'm just going to go C for the Rangers. I absolutely love what the Minnesota Twins did at this deadline. They did a great job. They needed starting pitching. They got it in Tyler Mahle, and they needed bullpen guys, and they got two of them, Jorge Lopez and Michael Fulmer, man. Jorge Lopez has been a solid closer for Baltimore this year. Fulmer, he's been a solid reliever in Detroit's bullpen. Very good moves overall. This is going to help the Twins in the second half of the year, and if they end up getting to the playoffs, you got a possible game 1, 2, or 3 starter in Tyler Mahle. Love what the Twins did. They did exactly what they needed to do. I'm going to give them an A. Moving on to the Toronto Blue Jays, nothing big and flashy, but I think they had themselves a pretty solid deadline. Let's take a look at some of the moves that they made. Anthony Bass for the bullpen. He's had a really good year with the Marlins. He's going to slide into a setup role for them. They really needed a guy for that bullpen. I think that was a solid add. Whit Merrifield, hey, he's going to add some versatility off the bench for you. I think he should have been traded a couple of years ago, but he's going to bring you versatility. He's going to bring you some speed. The bat is pretty down this year, but he's still going to add some value to that team. And you also added Mitch White. This is a guy where a young starting pitcher is going to add some depth for you. I think that was really good. I think for the Blue Jays, I'm going to go with a solid B. And last but not least, the Washington Nationals. Oh my goodness, I still cannot believe they traded Juan Soto. That is still just blowing my mind. My goodness. And the fact that Josh Bell, is throwing in this deal, that is just crazy to me. But we're talking about the Nationals here. They got themselves as good of a package as you could have gotten here. Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, Hassel, Wood. Susana has some upside. You got Voit too. He'll help out the major league team. But in the end, man, the Nationals, they had one of the worst farms in Major League Baseball. And this now puts them in the top 10 farm systems in Major League Baseball. This is huge. And Mackenzie Gore, this is a guy that's been in the majors this year. Abrams, this is your shortstop of the future. You got a couple of really good bats in Hassel and Wood. Susana has some high upside as a young pitching prospect there. I love what the Nationals did in this deal. I was thinking maybe the Cardinals would have been a better suitor for Juan Soto. You had guys like Carlson, Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn, some guys like that. But in the end, they got a great package here. Where the Padres had the advantage was they had more volume. And for the Nationals, they are going to reap the benefits from this. This is a great package for them. I think they did as good of a job as you could have done. I'm going to give the Washington Nationals an A. So those are my grades. Tell me what you think down below. Do you think some teams were too high, too low? Let me know what you think. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.